Hey everyone, welcome back to another manga review. Today we're reviewing another isekai manga, Reincarnated as a Virus. Viruses, that's topical. Please, YouTube algorithm, have mercy. I'm just reviewing a comic. So this is another spin on the isekai idea for those of you who don't really know about what an isekai is. Basically, it's about someone in our universe being sent to another world, usually a fantasy world, and it usually is done through reincarnation. The same concept has been used over and over again with different twists, and this one attempts to use the twist of the main character being reincarnated as a virus in a fantasy world. Corona-chan finally has their own manga series. Diving a little bit deeper into the story, the main character in our world was once this scientist who actually did research on viruses and tried to find cures for them. So you can imagine the irony of him being reincarnated as a virus itself. However, in his previous life, he was also extremely secluded, not much of a people person, and over time began to resent people, especially the people that he worked with. So as a virus, one of the very first things that he infects in this fantasy world is a small mouse, which is very typical of these types of stories. You start off with something small. A lot of isekais are noted for having very video gamey type terminology and ways of explaining how the rules exactly work in the world. It's kind of like that, where it's also kind of video gamey how they explain everything. So anything they infect with their virus, they gain their abilities, but they're also able to take over their consciousness. Now, he can only take over one consciousness at a time, so if he were to transfer his consciousness out of the mouse into another body that he infected, the mouse would just return back to normal animal instincts. The way that we're introduced to this main character, coming to terms with, him being a virus now in this new fantasy world, you get the impression that this is a very self-serving character, selfish in a lot of ways, where he thinks about how he can take the most advantage out of his new life and not really care about what exactly happens to the world. The very first thing that's coming to his mind is, man, I can take over everybody, gain all the abilities, and become like a god that can take control of humanity. So being introduced to a character like that kind of had me a little bit uneasy as we were beginning the series, because I don't really like it when the main character is not someone that I can root for. At some point, he takes over the body of a wolf and saves a human girl. He's thinking about taking over her body, but decides that it's not a good idea since she's such a chatterbox and he's not a very social person, so he wouldn't be able to really fit himself into her lifestyle. But still, like I was going back to what I was saying before, it's like selfish and not exactly morally good to just be taking over people's bodies for your own purposes. They also set up this idea that he can't take over everyone's bodies because some people might be resistant to the virus, which I appreciate, as I don't want this character to be too overpowered. Although that is how a lot of isekais go. They just decide to make the main character super overpowered, and I don't know, I guess it's some kind of fantasy fulfillment. After realizing he's not yet ready to take over the body of a human, he instead takes the body of a small goblin. And this is the part where I think the main character starts to turn around, in my opinion, and become a little bit more respectable, a little bit less selfish. The goblins are not very intelligent, but they are relatively kind to one another. However, they take their orders from a Lord Hobgoblin, who is not very nice to them and does not treat them very well. They only follow his orders because he's relatively intelligent, bigger, stronger than them. So naturally, our main character decides to take over the Lord Hobgoblin. And he uses his body to then take care of the goblins properly and actually treat them well, which I feel like is a relatively good way of trying to show that the main character is not just a piece of shit who's just selfish, but actually has the potential to care about other people, which could be, progression from what we know about him from his past life, where he didn't really like people or didn't like being around people. Now he's kind of warming up to this idea of being social. I also feel like it's a lot better to show him taking over like an evil person's body to make them nice, as opposed to taking over an innocent person's body. Although I guess he's not a person at all, he's a hobgoblin, but you get what I mean. I feel like it's a lot more reasonable to have him take over this evil hobgoblin rather than take over this innocent girl's body. The first volume then ends with him getting a mask that he could use to hide his goblin face and go to the human village, where he could then theoretically infect people, or at the very least communicate with the people of the village. So I'm not exactly sure which direction this manga intends to go in, but I do hope that we're going in the more positive direction, where the character continues to grow and be a better person rather than trying to just be selfish with his newfound abilities. Given that the girl he saves is on the main cover, I'm assuming that she becomes more of a main character, assuming at least. And in theory, perhaps the two of them end up forming an adventuring party and actually use his power for good. Maybe the idea is that he fights monsters that are terrorizing people and is then able to take over the monsters, therefore taking on their abilities as well and making him grow stronger and stronger. Whether or not he's going to stay in the hobgoblin body, I'm not sure. The thing is also, since he can infect multiple bodies, it doesn't matter if the body that he's in gets killed, because he can just transfer his consciousness into another one. So it does make up for an interesting stage that the author set for themselves. And it certainly wasn't a bad read, but like I said, it could go completely different directions depending on what exactly they have planned for this character. I can tell that the author really likes hearing them self-talk about the concept, because there are very large portions of the manga in which the main character is just talking about this concept of being a virus, being able to infect people, take their abilities and take over their bodies, and what that means for them, and all these different theories of how it could be used. I could use a little bit less talk and a little more action myself, but I will admit it is very thought-provoking, and I'm sure that it could inspire many conversations amongst fans. So as far as isekai mangas go, I'd say that this wasn't super bad. Obviously, I want to see where it goes in the future, but as of just judging Volume 1, Reincarnated as a Virus is a pretty decent read. So definitely let me know what you think if you've read this manga yourself. Do you have any thoughts, any opinions, any theories of your own, or any other manga series that you would like me to read and review? I'm reading a bunch of old manga series right now, but I'm also trying to keep an eye on new ones, so definitely leave any recommendations in the comment section below. Like the video and subscribe if you'd like to see more reviews from me. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye! Hey, you! Tired of reading bad comics? But there are no good comics. No, you're wrong! There's BurningstarComics.net. Original comics made by me and my friends. Stop reading bad comics and start getting to the indies, nerd. Wow! BurningstarComics.net. Check the link in the description.
Program restart.